Welcome to Mindful with Minaa, where we explore how mindfulness can enhance your relationships and well-being. I'm your host, Minaa B, a licensed social worker, mental health educator, and author. Through insightful discussions, I will guide you towards self-awareness and self-efficacy, empowering you to effectively manage your relationships, reduce burnout, and be more present with yourself. So let's jump into today's episode. What's up, Mindful community? Welcome back to Mindful with Minaa. I'm your host, Minaa B, and today I want to talk to you about something that I am always talking to my clients about in therapy, which is self-sabotage. I'm sure this is something that you have probably struggled with because I think we all struggle with it. I think we all have moments where we say we want something, but our actions don't reflect the things that we want. And I think it's time we talk about it. So if self-sabotage sounds familiar to you, I want you to know that you're not alone. In fact, self-sabotage is something so many of us do, and I'm going to help you unpack why you do it, where it comes from, and most importantly, how to break the cycle. So let's start off with a definition. Self-sabotage is when our actions or inactions undermine our own goals and values. So on the surface, it looks like procrastination, avoidance, perfectionism, or even destructive coping mechanisms or destructive habits. But underneath, it's usually driven by fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of success, fear of loneliness. I'm sure you can say fear of and fill in the blank. Think about times where you have engaged in self-sabotage, and I really want you to sit with yourself and ask yourself, what were you afraid of? Because sometimes we're afraid of change, and sometimes we're afraid of dealing with what might be on the other side of what it is that we want. So why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we get in our own way? So there are a few reasons why people might engage in self-sabotage. And I'm going to list 4 reasons. First, it's unhealed wounds. When we've been hurt in the past, maybe through rejection, criticism, or trauma, even if it starts in our childhood, we can start protecting ourselves by playing small. And we can do this by engaging in patterns that we perceive as a form of safety. We can start doing things that prevents us from taking risks. I even want you to think about how you might self-sabotage in relationships because you're so used to familiarity that it keeps you in a state of chaos and dysfunction because that's what you're familiar with. And it feels scary to try something new. It feels scary to date someone with different qualities. It feels scary to date someone that falls outside of whatever standards you have for attractiveness. It feels scary to take on the risk of trying out a new career or moving into a new job. So I want you to think about how these wounds of rejection and criticism or even trauma can really plant a seed that results in you self-sabotaging. Another thing that can happen that will get in the way of people making choices that align with their values is low self-worth and low self-esteem. If deep down you don't believe you deserve success, healthy love, or even happiness, you will find ways to unconsciously confirm that belief. And this is what we call a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is something I am always talking to clients about, especially if you are somebody who struggles with anxiety. Sometimes the thing we're anxious about, the new job, the new form of love, the new change, and I want you to think about the different ways you sabotage happiness from happening because you're so deeply afraid and worried that the worst outcome will come true that you kind of start taking steps for the worst outcome to come true. So think about that self-fulfilling prophecy and how that plays out in your life. Another thing is fear of change. Even positive change can feel destabilizing. So a new job, a new routine, a really good relationship, especially if you have a history of traumatic, dysfunctional relationships, all of it requires stepping into new territory, and our nervous system clings to the familiar, even if familiar is unhealthy. Another thing is comfort in chaos. For some of us, dysfunction feels normal. It's what you grew up in, it's what was modeled for you. So, calm and stability can feel foreign. And when that feels foreign, you can unconsciously stir up drama or delay progress just to return to what feels safe. So, what are some signs you are self sabotaging? I want you to pay attention to a few ways self sabotage can show up in your life. It can look like putting off very important tasks until you're forced to rush through it. And now you're making mistakes, or now you're anxious. You're having all of these negative reactions because you decided to procrastinate and you decided to put this very important thing to the side. It can look like starting projects but never finishing them. So, in the midst of starting a project, you get a new idea for a different project. So, you abandon the thing that you started and you can never finish anything. It looks like talking yourself out of opportunities because you're not ready. Now, in life, there can be times where we truly aren't ready for something new. But if that is your excuse for every single opportunity that comes your way, especially if it's something that you've said you wanted and now it's here, it literally showed up at your doorstep and you're like, never mind. I'm just going to close the door on this. I'm not ready for it. You really need to self reflect and ask yourself if this is a form of self sabotage. Sometimes it can also look like picking fights or distancing yourself in healthy relationships because it's unfamiliar to you. You don't know how to handle healthy conflict. So sometimes you stir up conflict as a result of that. It can also look like overcommitting. So you burn out and prove you can't handle it. So if any of these hit home, I want you to really self reflect and think about what's underneath all of it. Why are you engaging in these things? And now I'm going to share with you what you can be doing to stop the self sabotage cycle. So, the first thing I want you to do is name your patterns because awareness is always the first step in everything that we do. Write down the ways that you self sabotage. Is it procrastination? Is it negative self talk? Is it constantly canceling on commitments? Seeing it on paper can help you break the automatic cycle. But the next thing I want you to do is process why. Ask yourself, what fear is driving this behavior? Is it fear of failure, rejection, or not being good enough? Getting curious softens the shame and guilt, and it points you toward healing. Another thing that you need to do is redefine success. So instead of aiming for perfection, try progress. Commit to 15 minutes of focused work or whatever it is that thing is. Give 15 minutes of your time to it. If you avoid working out, work out for 15 minutes. Put on your sneakers and just stretch. Go for a walk. Take very, very small steps so that you can build trust with yourself over time. Because often self sabotage comes from a lack of inner trust in ourselves to overcome the fear that we have. So, in order for you to teach yourself that you can do hard things, you're going to have to do hard things. The last thing is that I want you to think about building self compassion because research shows that people who practice self compassion are more likely to stay consistent with their goals. So instead of beating yourself up, talk to yourself like you would a close friend. It's okay, I slipped up today, but I am going to try again tomorrow. I think it's important for us to remember that self sabotage often kicks in when our emotions feel overwhelming. So it's important to have coping tools that can strengthen your regulation skills. That can look like journaling, deep breathing, moving your body, going outside, or even co-regulating with other people who can provide you with wisdom, discernment, and insight to why you're doing what you're doing, and just offer actionable steps that you can take that is very helpful and helps you reach your goals. So the one thing I want you to remember is this: self-sabotage is not laziness. It is a protective mechanism. Your brain is trying to keep you safe, even if it's going about it in a destructive way. So instead of approaching yourself with punishment, try approaching yourself with curiosity. Ask, what is my self sabotage trying to protect me from? And when you answer that, you'll uncover the healing work that you really need. Because we all have to remember that it's important to remember that you can interrupt the cycle. You can choose differently. And you could build a life where you stop getting in your own way. But the only way to do that is to confront the fears that you have. So thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If it spoke to you, please share it with a friend. Please also share it on social media. If you want to stay connected to me and my work, you can order my book, Owning Our Struggles. I also encourage you to subscribe to my newsletter, Mindful with Mina, and you can find a link to that in the description box below. I'm also inviting you to join me from September 25th through 30th in Arizona, because I'm going to be teaching wellness workshops at CIVANA. So if you want to learn more, head to the description box where you can find all of the information. I also want you to remember that this is an opportunity for you to learn to be gentle with yourself. Remember, progress is still progress, even if it is messy. So continue to work on yourself, continue to unpack those things that are getting in the way of you living the life that you feel you deserve. Until next time.